Symposium. What a rousing beginning in that film. I'm Melinda Crane. I'm the chief political correspondent at Deutsche Welle, and it will be our very great honor to accompany you throughout the next 2 days. And when I say we, I mean not only me, but my colleague.
And I'm Henry Bonsu, also known in Ghana as Henry Nana Kwame Osei Bonsu. You may look at my threads and think, is he wearing Ghanaian attire? No, this is from the Gambia, and I want to try and represent something global to you. Born and raised in the UK, with roots in Ghana, I've had the privilege of life in what is considered to be a highly developed donor country, but going back to Accra, going back to Kumasi, I see how my relatives are living. And I know that although Ghana gets a good reputation, we still have a long way to go. If you consider how much the Republic of Korea has done in the last 50 or so years, Ghana and so many countries around the world, we should have done so much better. So this, for me, is not just professional, it's also personal. And for you, Melinda?
Indeed it is, because in fact I wrote my PhD more years ago than I care to admit on the effectiveness of development assistance. So it is a very special honor to be with all of you here at the symposium as we work together to ensure that future cooperation really does benefit the planet and its people, as we saw in that very motivating film.
Absolutely, and I hope you feel really motivated and revved up, not just for today, but for tomorrow. There's a lot of work to do. We're meeting at a critical point in time in what we might call the development cycle. Negotiations on the post-2015 development agenda are in full swing. This symposium is not another talking shop. It really is a crucial milestone. What we say and do here will matter. We aim to contribute very specific, and that word, very specific recommendations to the International Conference on Development Financing that will meet in Addis Ababa in mid-July, as well as to the post-2015 summit at the UN in New York in September this year.
And our symposium is also preparing the way for the 2016 Development Cooperation Forum. This, in fact, is the first high-level preparatory event for that. Now, Henry, you mentioned specific, concrete recommendations, and it's worth emphasizing right from the outset that, in fact, we are looking for really practical suggestions around 4 key issues, and you saw them in that brief film just now. Alignment is the first of the subjects. Aligning the means of implementation coming out of the Rio and the Monterrey processes with the crucial question, how do we promote a truly integrated approach? Second, absolute key issue, universality of the new agenda. You've heard the word a lot. The question is, how do policies, roles, and practices need to change?
And then we have issues number 3 and number 4. Number 3, the future of development cooperation. What's it going to look like? How's it evolving? How should allocation of official development assistance be improved? And additionality, there's a concept, additionality, added value, true extra value. How can we make sure it happens? And then number 4, non-financial development cooperation. What works best, especially when it comes to the private sector? We're talking more and more about the private sector. So there we have it, a brief roadmap of our topic and aims, and now it's our honor to hand over the stage for welcome remarks from our host.
Please welcome with us His Excellency Mr. Yoon Byung-se, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Korea. And before we give him a warm round of applause, we do ask your understanding for the fact that he will need to leave us directly after his remarks because he is going to attend a session of Parliament. But we know that all of you share our honor that he can be here with us this morning. So your stage, Mr. Minister.
Good morning. His Excellency Ambassador Saidik, President of ECOSOC, His Excellency Ambassador Talbot, co-facilitator for the preparatory process of the 3rd International Conference on Financing for Development, Under Secretary General Wu, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to Incheon. This city was a gateway between Korea and the world when its ports opened in the 19th century. Now it has become the springboard of a new Asia-Pacific age, a metropolis with its eyes on the future and a welcoming host of international organizations. The growth of Incheon mirrors the development of Korea, making it the perfect venue for today's symposium. Back in 1953, when I was born, Korea was a war-torn and dependent nation. The ensuing decades of growth has led us to Korea's today and has given us an extraordinary commitment and passion for development cooperation. So it means a lot to me to co-chair today's meeting as the foreign minister of a recipient-turned-donor country in our common journey for sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, this year marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. Potentially, it can become a historic year in its own right, a landmark year in the UN's pursuit of its key objectives: peace, development, and human rights. Our ambitious agendas to set the post-2015 development agenda and to reach a new global climate change accord will define not just the world we live in, but the world of our children. In this regard, today's symposium is very timely and significant in driving the momentum to reach new sustainable development goals, as it is the final symposium in the run-up to the Addis Ababa Conference and the New York Development Summit. Furthermore, the Millennium Development Goals, the target date is fast approaching. Despite the 15-year-long efforts and many successes, the bitter reality is that the bottom billion still suffer from crushing poverty, and in terms of equality, access to justice, and the environment, there are major gaps to be filled. Indeed, we are living in a paradox where our way of life is undermining our life and our planet. The linear economy structure that is the pattern of mass production, mass consumption, and mass dumping is not only unsustainable, but it is also aggravating climate change and imperiling our future. It is in this context that we are trying to shape and sharpen our vision for a post-2015 world. Ladies and gentlemen, last January in Davos, I took part in a leaders' discussion group defining the imperatives for 2015. At the time, Deputy Secretary General Jan Eliasson, who chaired the discussions, asked me the first question: how would Korea contribute to sustainable development, the most important agenda for the UN this year? My response was, we should ensure that the three main stops for the 2015 roadmap, the Financing for Development Conference in July, the UN Development Summit in September, and the UN Climate Change Conference in December, should dovetail each other, and we should collaborate together. Today's symposium is being held as part of that continuum to give impetus and create synergy in the discussions leading up to post-2015 development agenda. The daunting question before us is development cooperation for people and planet. What will it take? As I know you will engage and explore this question in its myriad aspects in the course of the next 2 days, instead of trying to supply answers, I try to set the stage by sharing a few key words. First is partnership. The nature of international development cooperation is going through changes. The post-2015 development agenda is about taking an integrated approach on the social, economic, and environmental factors. This has been translated into an unprecedented number of actors, pledges, means of implementation, working not only for poverty eradication and development, but for human dignity and environmental sustainability as well. This is a welcome phenomenon. We should embrace and empower such enthusiastic participation and align partnerships to bring out synergies. Traditional and emerging donor countries, recipient countries and international organizations, civil society and the private sector, we all need to encourage and engage with each other as partners in the journey for a universal agenda. And with the rise of broader and newer kinds of partnerships in development cooperation, we should not shy away from deploying new tools that fit the changing circumstances. In the 15 short years since the MDGs, we have seen sea changes in technology. So how can you use the data revolution and non-financial means of implementation to help us turn challenges into opportunities? How can various pledges be linked with means of implementation? By tackling such problems and coming up with possible solutions, this symposium can provide an enabling policy environment and eliminate bottlenecks in development cooperation. Second is universality. All voices have been calling for a universal post-2015 agenda. In this sense, whether we attain universality could make or break the post-2015 system. Just as we have no planet B, we have no plan B, except for a universal win-win agenda for sustainable development. For this, we need renewed global solidarity. Yes, achieving a universal agenda will be more difficult, but the process of working together for a global development cooperation model that puts people and planet at the center can actually serve as a catalyst in strengthening international solidarity. In this regard, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has been urging a post-2015 agenda that is more than an MDG sequel, with the message that, quote, commitments without empowerment are wars without meaning. Solidarity is crucial to solving problems in our interconnected world, unquote. Third is coherence and cross-linkages. There is a real need for improving coherence among various approaches and enhancing connectivity among different issues. Global issues such as the Ebola outbreak, humanitarian crisis, including refugees, food and energy security are often closely linked and can be best solved through a comprehensive, inclusive approach. And in my view, this is how we should approach the many upcoming events to be held in the run-up to the post-2015 summit in September. The key is connecting the fragmented dots to an integrated whole to weave the different strands into a harmonious unity that is bigger than its parts. And it is in such a spirit that following today's symposium, Korea will host the World Water Forum next week and the World Education Forum in May. As an emerging development partner, we wish to connect and synergize the key element of the post-2015 agenda by holding these global events. This is in addition to our efforts to promote effective development cooperation through the Busan Global Partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, this year, as the curtains fall on an era, we are building a new stage. During the past 3 years, we have come together to reach our goal. Now we are on the final stretch. The remaining 5 months are a golden opportunity to bring our wisdom together, to forge a harmonious partnership for development cooperation. So today and tomorrow, let us explore constructive and creative ways in making development cooperation work for people and planet. Thank you very much.
Minister Young, thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry you can't stay with us, but of course, ministers have to be accountable to Parliament. Accountability is a buzzword that we encourage in this forum, is it not? It is. Minister, thank you. And Minister Young mentioned a number of things, not least coherence. We want everything to be aligned. It must fit together. It must be integrated. So they're not going at cross purposes. And promoting the integrated approach has been a crucial aim of the Development Cooperation Forum since its inception nearly a decade ago. And as you know, the forum is a key platform, there's another buzzword for 2015, a platform of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. So let's hear its take, its vision really, on preparing for a universal agenda. Please welcome His Excellency Martin Sajek, President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council.
Honorable Vice Minister Shindong, Honorable Undersecretary General Wu Hongbo, and Honorable Ambassador Talbot, my dear friend and colleague. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you, Mr. Vice Minister, and through you also Minister Yoon and the government of Korea for hosting this high-level symposium, the first in our preparations for the 2016 Development Cooperation Forum. Your country's historic leap to become one of the world's most thriving economies and active partners in international development cooperation truly inspires us all. Songdo and Incheon are thus most fitting places for this policy debate on the future of development cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, a unique, unparalleled in history path forward is taking shape with the crafting of a transformative, unified and universal post-2015 development agenda focused on poverty eradication and sustainable development for all countries. There is broad consensus that the agenda's successful implementation will depend on a comprehensive financing framework for sustainable development. This framework must be relevant to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in all regions and for all income groups, and should seek coherence and maximize synergies with other financing streams. The success of the post-2015 development agenda will also hinge upon the effective review of progress on substantive goals and follow-up to commitments made, especially in the full spectrum of means of implementation. This requires a flexible, multi-layered global framework. It must build on existing mechanisms at all levels. The preparations of the Third International Conference on Financing for Development and the intergovernmental post-2015 negotiations in New York are at a critical juncture. Crucial meetings lie ahead of us in the coming 2 weeks. On April 20th and April 21st, we will also have in New York the traditional ECOSOC dialogue with the Bretton Woods institutions, WTO and UNCTAD. The interest of these two institutions and these organizations in sounding out and testing the present prevailing spirit in New York is really huge. There will be a good number of high-level representatives of these institutions in New York ready for a genuine dialogue. Strengthening the global partnership for development will be most vital. It will underpin implementation of the agenda, not only to mobilize resources, but also to facilitate engagement of stakeholders and address systemic issues. For this, all key aspects of the means of implementation of the SDGs should be addressed in the negotiations for and in Addis Ababa in July. Ladies and gentlemen, the Economic and Social Council is the principal body within the UN system for coordination and policy review on economic and social affairs. Since at least 1995, the Council has worked to advance a coordinated and integrated approach to the review and follow-up of UN conferences and summits, focused on the various dimensions of poverty and sustainable development. The Council and its functional and regional commissions, expert bodies, the UN funds and programs have clear, distinctive roles and a clear division of labor. They have accumulated extensive policy experience from the review of implementation of internationally agreed development goals, including the MDGs, to the follow-up to global commitments from Monterrey and Rio and beyond. 2014 was the first year that ECOSOC convened its newest platforms, including the High-Level Political Forum and the Integration Segment. It followed a calendar that enables structured engagement of experts and practitioners in dedicated segments and sessions throughout the year around a common annual theme. This year, the narrative emanating from different segments, including also the operational activities segment and the youth forum, has sharpened around the 2015 theme to support the transition from the MDGs to the SDGs. And Ambassador Talbot, who is with us here today, is not only now the one of the co-facilitators for this Addis conference, but he is also one of the two godfathers of the reform of ECOSOC, and I can only thank him for his work that he has done in this respect. While it takes time, the Council is well on its way to becoming a truly integrating and unifying platform. My vision for the Council is to show how global policy debate can translate an aspirational debate into effective sharing of knowledge, mutual learning, and delivering on promises that stimulate specific actions and lasting results for people. The DCF is one of the Council's core functions, contributing to integration and implementation of sustainable development. Its work informs the financing for development process, and the HLPF on sustainable development takes the ongoing work of the DCF into account. The HLPF could specifically draw on the extensive work and experience of the DCF in the field of monitoring, review, and accountability for development results at all levels. This question will be at the core of the upcoming HLPF at the end of June, beginning of July in New York. The DCF serves as the United Nations focal point to carry out the holistic consideration of issues related to international development cooperation, with the participation of all relevant stakeholders. It is thus driven by substance. It provides a truly essential space for decision makers and experts to openly deliberate and generate recommendations on key and often sensitive issues. Ladies and gentlemen, the DCF Symposium here in Songdo is focused on one of the most critical pieces of the puzzle: how to gain wider recognition and mobilize more and more effective development cooperation as an integrating force for sustainable development. Development cooperation embraces practices that involve both financial and non-financial means of implementation. It has to be more at the center of a coherent narrative, vision, and concerted action for the realization of the new agenda. Cooperating on issues of development is vital for the broader global partnership for sustainable development, needed to bring about systemic policy change, to leave no one behind, to tackle common global problems, and to take up opportunities to put the world on a firm path towards sustainable development for all. While I have laid out now some of the wider context, let us focus here in Songdo on the practical arrangements governments and other stakeholders will have to make to be ready for development cooperation in a post-2015 setting. I'm truly confident that our deliberations here will identify some concrete policy advice to support preparations for the third International Conference on Financing for Development and the post-2015 deliberations. And I look forward to a frank, constructive, and policy-oriented dialogue. I thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks to ECOSOC President Martin Seidik. Well, as you just heard there, our goal at this symposium really is to produce and deliver very concrete, very actionable recommendations for that third International Conference on Financing for Development in Addis Ababa in just a few months' time. And we also just heard that preparations for that conference are at a very critical juncture. So we can be especially glad that our next speaker did find the time in his schedule to be with us today, because he is a co-facilitator of the preparatory process for the Addis Ababa conference. It's a very great pleasure to welcome the permanent representative of Guyana to the United Nations, Mr. George Talbot. The floor is yours, Mr. Talbot.
Thank you very much for that very warm introduction. Honorable Deputy Minister Shin, His Excellency President of ECOSOC, Mr. Martin Seidik, Under Secretary General Wu Hongbo, Excellencies, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to begin by expressing my gratitude to the government and the people of the Republic of Korea for hosting this very important event, and to the co-organizers of this Development Cooperation Forum High-Level Symposium for inviting me and affording me the opportunity in my capacity as co-facilitator of preparations for the Third International Conference on Financing for Development, to say a few words. Let me say that the Financing for Development Conference will result in an intergovernmentally negotiated and agreed outcome, which should constitute an important contribution to and support the implementation of the post-2015 development agenda. The conference will focus on assessing the progress made in the implementation of the Monterrey Consensus and Doha Declaration, and on addressing new and emerging issues, including in the context of regional multilateral efforts to promote development cooperation. Key among these would be a consideration of the evolving development landscape, the interrelationship of different sources of development finance, and the synergies between financing objectives across the three dimensions: economic, social, and environmental of sustainable development. From the perspective of the co-facilitators, there are four key elements for the success of Addis. The first is the need to agree on a holistic and forward-looking global framework for financing sustainable development that is responsive to the ambitious demands of the post-2015 development agenda. The second, which is closely related to the first, is to establish a platform of actionable initiatives, what we have called deliverables. In this regard, we have highlighted in the various discussions the critical need for investments in infrastructure, in energy, in agriculture, and critical social investments, health, education, to help unlock the potential of people and partners, and to unlock the possibilities for broader implementation of the post-2015 development agenda. The third dimension is the need for an effective follow-up process that will drive implementation in a coherent manner at the national, regional, and global levels. Fourth, which is critical to the achievement of the previous three, is the need for strong political presence and support, both from states and other key actors. This DCF high-level symposium has the challenging task of producing key recommendations and messages to the ongoing negotiations on FFD. And allow me to just briefly touch upon the state of the negotiations as they currently stand. First, let me say that the preparatory process is well underway. Member states have participated actively with strong representation from capitals, in particular from ministries of finance and development cooperation, both from developing and developed countries. Major institutional stakeholders, including the Bretton Woods, the WTO, UNCTAD, UNDP, and others, have been actively engaged and have contributed to our discussions. The process is now at a very critical stage. The questions at hand are paramount. Financing needs for poverty eradication and sustainable development remain enormous. They include addressing basic needs, such as eradicating poverty and hunger, and improving health and education. National sustainable development investment financing needs, such as infrastructure and rural development, and protecting our ecosystems and our planet. Last month, my fellow co-facilitator, Ambassador Gareth Peterson of Norway, and I presented a zero draft of the outcome document entitled the Addis Ababa Accord, a Global Framework for Financing Sustainable Development. The zero draft is based on the wide range of views expressed by member states and all stakeholders in the preparatory process so far, and serves as a basis for the upcoming intergovernmental negotiations that will begin next Monday in New York. I will take this opportunity to just highlight a few points that are particularly relevant to the discussions here in Songbo. First, achieving the SDGs will require a comprehensive and holistic approach combining different modalities and instruments. The Zero Draft recognizes the importance of a new global partnership for sustainable development based on efforts and responsibilities shared by all. Secondly, international public finance plays an important role. The Zero Draft urges all developed countries that have not yet met the 0.7% target to substantially increase their ODA with a view to meeting the target by 2020, supported by indicative timetables to be established this year, 2015. It also encourages developed countries to target ODA to the poorest and those most in need. Thirdly, the Zero Draft calls for a scale-up of funding from all sources for investments in areas addressing climate change. It in particular acknowledges the importance of aligning all financial flows, including ODA, with the three dimensions of sustainable development. Fourthly, the Zero Draft also gives a dedicated space to non-financial means of implementation, namely technology, innovation, and capacity building, in addition, of course, to the established focus on trade and systemic issues which have characterized the Monterrey-Doha process. I believe that this symposium will shed important light on these issues. Fifthly, the Zero Draft acknowledges that despite the very significant needs that exist, the patterns of resource flows highlight the opportunities for mobilizing sufficient financing to support the achievement of sustainable development. Meeting financing needs requires making use of all flows in a holistic way and maximizing their synergies. Engaging a broad spectrum of stakeholders, both public, private, and philanthropic, will be critical to our success. Such a holistic approach applies at national, regional, and international levels. A new global partnership for sustainable development should serve to bring together the various strands of means of implementation around the overarching objective of achieving sustainable development and the SDGs. In conclusion, let me say that with the Sendai Conference behind us, Addis will be the first in a critical triad of global events to be followed in New York in September with the post-2015 summit and in Paris in December on climate change. Success in Addis will be critical to effective delivery of the sustainable development and climate agendas. I therefore look forward to your concrete contributions to our common success. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Tolbert, thank you very much indeed, and it's rather intriguing that a moment or two ago you were described as a godfather, I think by Excellency Sajik, a godfather of ECOSOC reform. And some of these institutions need godfathers of maybe sometimes the Corleone variety to try and drive through change and get things done, which leads me to your background as somebody from Guyana, because in the UK, in the African Caribbean community, we talk about the Guyanese mafia positively, because the Guyanese people are said to punch above their weight in the UK and also on the international scene. The most famous member of the Guyanese community in the UK is Baroness Valerie Amos, who of course had a distinguished role here at the United Nations. We're going to move on because this symposium has been organized by the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And its Under-Secretary General, I won't describe him as a godfather, is with us here today. He is also Secretary General of the Addis Ababa Conference on Financing for Development. Let's hear about his expectations. Let him sketch out his vision, what he expects from this symposium. A warm welcome, please, for Mr. Wu Hongbo.
Honorable Vice Minister Shim, Ambassador Sadek, Ambassador Tolbert, dear colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Warm welcome to the first high-level symposium of the 2015 Development Cooperation Forum. My deep appreciation goes to the government of the Republic of Korea and also for hosting us, and for all of you for participating in this symposium. Our task is to generate concrete policy recommendations along two lines. First, to support the negotiations leading up to the third International Conference on Financing for Development and the post-2015 summit. And the second, to assist practical preparations by countries and all stakeholders for development cooperation in a post-2015 setting. Ladies and gentlemen, since the adoption of the Millennium Declaration, the Monterey consensus and Johannesburg plan of implementation, the world has seen significant growth of all types of finance. Yet, risks and vulnerabilities are more pronounced than ever. International development cooperation has played a vital role in addressing these challenges, even as it accounts for a smaller fraction of international financing for development. The post-2015 era is poised to elevate the importance of development cooperation as integrating force for sustainable development, for engaging all stakeholders, and for ensuring no one is left behind. Implementation of the emerging post-2015 development agenda will require international support of unprecedented scale and scope. Delivery on ODA commitments will remain the foundation for a renewed global partnership for sustainable development. Official development assistance remains a critical and catalytic element for developing countries. It can be targeted more efficiently across the 3 dimensions of sustainable development to address the needs of the poorest and the most vulnerable. Yet, we must understand and advocate for development cooperation in all its forms, from financial transfer to technology facilitation to capacity support and policy change. We must recognize its diverse modalities and embrace the broad array of actors involved. At this time, we must not lose sight of its core characteristics. Development cooperation must remain focused on developing countries. Development cooperation should also focus on internationally agreed goals to be achieved by the new global development agenda. As proposed in one of the papers before this symposium, development cooperation will continue to have the following major tasks. First, to support and complement efforts of developing countries to guarantee that universal and basic standards are provided for their citizens. Second, to provide policy recommendations on improving developing countries' standards of living. And 3, to support efforts of developing countries to participate actively in collective action to address global development challenges. All this cannot be achieved by development cooperation alone. The range of international support required is much broader. Building on the strength of the MDGs, new ways must be found to mobilize and allocate resources. We should also unlock and make efficient use of unprecedented amounts of domestic and international public and private financial and non-financial resources and other means of implementation. And systemic issues have to be addressed, including enabling environment for development at all levels. This has to be guided by the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. A renewed global partnership for sustainable development is needed, with a greater capability to address common challenges. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us take these 2 days to tightly focus on what it takes for development cooperation to truly serve people and the planet. This is our opportunity to make a real contribution to moving forward the preparation for Third International Conference on Financing for Development, the post-2015 summit and beyond, to the day-to-day practice of development cooperation in a new and transformative era. I wish us sincerely fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to Undersecretary Wu for those opening remarks, and we will be picking up on the themes that all of our speakers have introduced us to here this morning. But that does bring our opening session to a close, and as you will see just in a moment, our press members are going to be leaving us now, so that we will soon just be amongst ourselves. So let me say just a few words about procedure for the remainder of the symposium, starting out with what should hopefully be quite obvious. This symposium is absolutely a symposium in fact as well as in name. It is absolutely dedicated to dialogue. We want to hear the widest possible array of perspectives and of opinions, and have a very broad and lively exchange with all of you, as well as with our speakers who are on the stage during our sessions. So we want to forego lengthy formal presentations. We're going to be looking for truly brief inputs from all of our speakers in the upcoming sessions. Brief means about 5 minutes, not more. Those should provide a stimulus for truly open discussion amongst all of us at the tables as well as up here on stage. We do request that everyone who takes the floor, whether on the floor or up here, does try to provide truly concise and to-the-point remarks so that we can hear from as many people as possible. And we also would like to ask you to defer from repeating messages that have already been conveyed. So if you're taking the floor from one of the tables, if it's already been said, you don't need to confirm it for us. And thank you very much for your understanding on that point. And finally, if you want to share other written material with us, we are very, very eager to have that. Then please go over here to the DCF preparation team and provide that to them.
We want that open dialogue, as Melinda says. So in order to facilitate it, Chatham House rules apply, which means there'll be no leaking. Even if you think somebody said something outrageous, we keep it within the room, and we deliberate it, we tear it apart, we discuss it, we agree or disagree. Very, very important to have that space and that freedom. Note-taking, yes, you will see people scribbling away furiously, but this is not so they can condemn you later. Those people who are scribbling away, if it's not you, the delegates, there will be members of the UN DCF team, and recordings will only be used internally by the DCF team in their work. And speaking of materials, you should all have received one of those lovely sort of brownish conference folders, lots of material inside. The substantive content is also available in French and Spanish, and also I think the USB sticks are available from the conference organizers, and they will have content in French and Spanish as well.
Very good. So let us get started. We will now move directly into our first session. So I'd like to say thank you to all of our speakers who have been with us for the opening. And you, Undersecretary Wu, you should please stay with us because you're going to chair our next session. But to the other speakers, a very warm round of applause for being with us. Thank you so much. And Henry, we'll see you in just a bit as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.